This week on Quality Digest Live, we look at the underlying belief systems that hinder quality improvement.
Plus, do you ever feel like a headless chicken leading the blind? We'll find out what you can do to prevent that feeling when we come back.
Welcome back to Quality Digest Live for January 24th, 2014. QDL is your weekly look at who and what is making news in the world of quality. I'm Dirk Ducharme, Editor-in-Chief of Quality Digest.
Yes, he is, and I'm Quality Digest publisher Mike Richmond. Alrighty, well, let's get the show started today by talking about the recent merger between American Airlines and US Airways. MIT Sloan Executive Education's Innovation at Work blog took the merger as its jumping off point in the article The Role of Employee Satisfaction in Successful Airline Mergers, which we ran in yesterday's issue of Quality Digest Daily. As the story points out, in the midst of a merger like this, top managers spend most of their time focused on many of the complex financial and operational issues involved in combining two very large and not necessarily complementary organizations. Personnel matters and employee relations are very often pushed to the back burner, and sometimes they're never really addressed as an important strategic part of the merger. But employees are the public face of any large-scale enterprise, especially one that deals with such a vast number of customers each and every day. Engaged employees who understand the mission and vision of the organization will naturally do a better job of providing great customer service. Large mergers often prove disruptive to the cohesion of teams that must deal with customers on an ongoing basis throughout the process of the merger. So if you think about it, the C-suite really has it backwards when they contemplate the details behind mergers of this magnitude. Integrating operations is complex, and we all know that you can't get that stuff wrong. You got to make sure that's right. But those issues are mostly invisible to your customers. Getting service team members on the same page should really be job number one, so that they can spread their enthusiasm to the people who matter most. Again, those are your customers. Annette Franz-Glenecki, for example, spoke about this recently in her article, What Trumps a Great Customer Experience. She spoke to this idea that what trumps a great customer experience is a great employee experience. The idea that if you want your customers to feel like your company is engaged with them and understands what their needs are, the best way to do that is to have employees who have that passion.
Who are also engaged.
And are engaged. And you know, naturally, when you have a merger like this, again, where it's not necessarily complementary teams coming together, there's different protocols and techniques and ways that they operate, there's going to be a lot of disruption, and the customers are going to sense that. You know, customers are going to have changes, are going to have questions. I mean, things like loyalty programs. You know, how do my points translate from one to the other with this new thing? And your team members really have to understand the answers to those questions. And they have to be on the same page, and they have to be giving your customers the same answers. You know, morale and teamwork. This is, I think, an important point. Morale and teamwork can be built or destroyed in equally fast measures. It can be done successfully if employees understand what they're doing, how it affects the larger organization, and why it matters. Again, the point being that you have to start, I think, by bringing your team together with both parts of the merger and having them have a common vision and understanding of what that new company is going to be about, so that they can communicate it to the customers.
Exactly.
That way the customers are comfortable, they feel as though they are bought into the process and they're not left behind. But again, of course, operational stuff, financial issues, those are going to be important. But the moral of this story is don't forget about that other stuff, because customer-facing issues are really important. They're going to make or break your company in the long run.
Strangely enough, employee engagement and working together for a common goal is actually a nice segue into our next story. Back in November, NIST announced the winners of the 2013 Malcolm Baldrige National Quality Award. One of the winners was Sutter Davis Hospital, a 48-bed acute care facility located in Davis, California, just outside of Sacramento and practically down the road from us. So we thought it'd be great to interview Sutter Davis CEO Janet Wagner to find out what the Baldrige journey was like. That interview is available as a two-part profiles and quality video, which you can find if you follow the story link below. Just go to the story and you'll see both videos embedded in it, as well as kind of a synopsis of my interview. Well, if Sutter Davis is any indication, this is really just for us a data point of one of the hallmarks of a Baldrige company, a Baldrige winning company, is leadership. Leadership has to be visible, in my mind. Leadership has to be visible. It has to be accessible. And I'll tell you one thing, just a little anecdote. One thing that we saw right off the bat, practically when we got there, we're shooting this video, we're doing an interview, and our director, Chris Smith, wanted to shoot a little B-roll, some background video of us, Janet and I, the CEO, walking down a hallway. So we go down to the hallway, we're walking down the hallway, and an orderly sees us walking. Nice guy in green scrubs out there, an orderly. He says, "Oh, hey, Janet, no, you got that walk all wrong." He says, "No, you got to walk kind of like this." You just kind of this swagger, you know. No, that's the way you should be walking, right? Baldrige winner, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And then
a CEO and an orderly. I mean, yeah.
Well, yeah, number one.
Right.
I mean, keep in mind, Sutter is a small hospital, but it's not that small. They've got 350 staff. I think 350 different doctors work within that hospital setting. So it's not that small a company. I've worked in companies smaller where I don't think the people even knew who the CEO was, not to mention the CEO walking the halls and people know who he or she is. And it wasn't just the orderly. A security guard has actually brought us to her attention to say, hey, by the way, you should get your story covered by Quality Digest. I mean, she seems very accessible, and to me, that is kind of a hallmark of a company that has good leadership that is accessible, and you need that if you're going to be if you're going to be a Baldrige winner. I think the company is also probably Sutter Davis Hospital is a company, nonprofit. It can't hurt that also Wagner was a nurse, and it isn't always the case that a company CEO is from the trenches, and often even if they are, do they remember what it was like, and do they bring those experiences to bear once they are leading the organization? And to me, I think that is actually what is happening at Sutter Davis. But the goal of Wagner and her team, the entire staff, is to view the hospital experience holistically, and not just from a clinical perspective. I mean, Sutter Davis is already there clinically. Clinically, they're in the top 10% of many patient care measures, national measures. For example, evidence-based performance scores reported to the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services have ranked Sutter Davis in the top 10% nationally since 2010. MIDAS, a healthcare software and tracking and trending quality of care data, shows Sutter Davis exceeds the top 10% benchmarks nationally for readmission rates and average length of stay and a variety of measures. So they really have the clinical bit down. But what Wagner told me is that before they took the Baldrige approach to looking at Sutter Davis Hospital, what they were lacking in was overall patient experience. And that became a lot of what their Baldrige journey was about. How do you identify and tap into what makes a patient experience pleasurable or memorable, given that you're already in a hospital and there's only certain limitations to that. But they looked outside the healthcare environment, and this is what I thought was interesting. Who did they look to? They looked to Disney, of all places, and the Ritz-Carlton. And what Wagner told me is, she said, you know, you wouldn't think, or we didn't think at the time, that you could control the for lack of a better word, kind of the emotional environment of a patient or in a hospital, that you can't control that very well, that what you really have a handle on is clinical. But she discovered, and her team discovered through the Baldrige process, that really they do have some control over that, and a lot of it was bedside behaviors. They started watching and talking to patients and kind of analyzing what bedside behaviors had a positive, or I'm assuming also a negative, impact on patients' perception of the overall experience. And using a variety of techniques, she refers to the Sutter group, which is a consulting group for healthcare industries, using a lot of techniques brought to them by them, some Deming, her background is also in Deming. By taking those and applying those to their approach to patient care, they were actually able to, improve the overall patient experience for all of their patients, not just the clinical, but also the kind of a holistic approach, and so that the entire stay for a patient is as good as it can possibly be when you're in a hospital.
Sure.
So, as I said, you can watch. It's a very interesting interview. There's two parts. Each part is like 10, 15 minutes long. You can watch the two-part interview by looking at the story below. But I do want to show you this one clip because I thought it was pretty fun. What it's like to win the Baldrige. She's so low-key on this, but believe me, Janet Wagner was definitely excited. Why don't we roll that clip? When did you find out that you won the Baldrige?
We found out in November, actually. We got the call in November.
And does that call come right to you?
It did. It came exactly to me. And as soon as the call came through, when it was announced that it was the Secretary of Commerce, I knew that we were going to be a recipient. And it is very exciting. Even though you think it's not going to be exciting.
Were you screaming?
You know, well, your heart beats really, really fast. Your heart just goes pounding. And the Secretary of Commerce was just very kind and very complimentary. But it's still a call from Washington, D.C., and it's a thrill. It is definitely.
And what was it like for when you were able to tell your employees?
There were screams then. I mean, there were lots of screams then, and I was like, shh, we're in a hospital, we're in a hospital. But they were very, very excited, and it was, we had champagne, and we were celebrating, because I knew, when I went to tell them, I knew that we were going to celebrate. So, and they were just.
That was Janet Wagner, CEO of Sutter Davis Hospital in Davis, California, one of only 3 winners of this year's 2013 Malcolm Baldrige National Quality Award. Congratulations to Janet Wagner and her entire team there at Sutter Davis. Good on you.
Very well deserved. Very well deserved. You can tell, and I think the anecdotes you kind of gave about.
You can tell the difference. I mean, it's interesting.
Yeah, you can, and I think that benchmarking is a great opportunity for everyone out there to take a look at that and watch those videos. Definitely check out those videos and see what it is, what their secret sauce is, and you can see what it is it's this personal leadership, I think really is what it is. And Janet, I think you can see it there in that 1-minute clip too. So check out those videos. Again, right below the player page there, all the stories that Dirk and I are going to be covering on today's show, you can find right down there. Okay, well, we're going to turn now to our feature articles for this week, and the first one is one that I'm going to cover from one of our longtime contributors, Davis Baldrige. And Davis's article, which ran in yesterday's issue, I think it was yesterday's issue of Quality Digest Daily, was called Improvement, as simple as ABCD. By Davis Baldrige. I'm sorry, that actually ran in Tuesday's issue of Quality Digest Daily. And you know what's interesting? All 4 letters in ABCD are found in Davis Baldrige's name.
That's amazing.
It's incredible. Wow. It's incredible things you find out when you actually begin to look at these articles.
And you actually read them.
You read them. And you read the names of your contributors. Well, Davis's article, again, Improvement, as simple as ABCD, Davis Baldrige, it appeared in Tuesday's issue of Quality Digest Daily. And Davis, what I love about Davis is he mixes the precision of a statistical mindset, he's a statistician, with some very deep and wise insights into the psychology of work and the forces contributing to, or in this case, conspiring against, meaningful change. And that's the subject of his latest column, and it hit me really right between the eyes because it addresses something that I've always wondered about, which is the deep problem that people have with accepting change. Why is there so much resistance to change? And I think, as I've really never read before as clearly, this article really addressed why people fear change so much. And I'm going to get there in a minute. The answer is a good one. But first, let me set it up for you a little bit. Davis begins by relating this ABCD thing, the stages of change process, which he learned 25 years ago. And let's throw that slide up here because I think it shows it really clearly, and you can see it right here. ABCD. A, awareness. B, breakthrough in knowledge. Choosing a breakthrough in thinking. Demonstrating a consistent breakthrough in behavior. ABCD of the change process. And the point here is that thinking leads to change, really, but only if you're willing to act. Too many fall, I think, for the comforts of the same old, rather than suffering the discomfort and many times the political ramifications of pressing for real change. But that's what change agents do. You know, you have to be that person who's willing to do this. Victims need not apply, and Davis spent some time in this article talking about victimhood and the embodiment that people have many times of saying, well, I can't. It's beyond me, and it's not my fault. Or, you know, the culture needs to change. I can't be the person who does that. Well, you know, fair or not, you're taking on the aspect of being a victim here, and that's not what change agents do. Change agents push through victimhood. They don't accept the fact that they can't. They say that we can because you have to. That's what the job's all about. Davis makes the point even more clearly, I think, in a quote that he issues here in the article from Jack Kornfield. And let's throw that one up here because I want to read that one as well. It's really, I think, valuable to look at it from this perspective. And this is from Jack Kornfield in his book, Buddha's Little Instruction Book. Through our senses, the world appears. Through our reactions, we create delusions. Without reactions, the world becomes clear. It is not our preferences that cause problems, but our attachment to them. Again, Jack Kornfield, Buddha's Little Instruction Book. That's it right there. And that's the bingo. That's the dime drop for me. Attachment. The very human need, I think, to latch, to connect emotionally to something that's bigger than oneself, and whether that's going to be your career, your job, a romance, a self-image, a fresh start, whatever. The being attached to a specific outcome achieved in a specific way calms us. It moors us. It allows us to relax in our certainties, and we will fiercely protect those certainties in the midst of so much uncertainty in the world, right? It makes sense. It's a delusion, this illusion of control. And that's the thing, is that there's so much going on that we feel is beyond our control in this world of ours. It's a complex world we live in. We know this, right, psychologically. And the things that we feel like we can control, the things that we know that we don't have to think about anymore, that Davis says, well, you got to think about, are the things that we don't want to change. You know, I can't control what's going on with famines and wars and weather and political systems, whatever it may be, but I can control the way I do my work. I can control the way that this works. I can control the way that I present information in a chart that maybe has no use really, and maybe is even misleading, but I can control that. I don't want to change that. You know, we're comfortable with that. We're comfortable with the way that works. Well, that's the heart of the problem. That was when the dime dropped for me. I said, that makes a lot of sense. It's all about attachment. Attachment to outcomes, which is really kind of a Buddhist thought, if you think about it. I mean, Buddha's Little Instruction Book, right, is where he pulled that from. I mean, it's a very Buddhist idea, this idea that you don't want to be attached to outcomes, you know. In New Age thought, a lot of that's talking about romance, you know. It's like, don't be attached to the outcome. Just go with it and live your life the way you want to live your life. Well, I mean, it makes a lot of sense. And in a business perspective, that makes some sense too. I mean, if you are attached to something being a certain way, if you're not flexible enough to say, well, let's break out of that. Let's look at it in a different way, in a better way that maybe is a little scary. And then maybe you have to help convert the managers and the team workers in your organization to that way of thinking. You have to do it. I mean, you can't be afraid to do that. If you are, you're not a change agent. If you want to be a change agent and you want to do that, well then you've got to be that person. Let's play one last quote from the article before I close, and this is from Alan Watts, and this is a good one to leave you on, I think. We see what we believe rather than believe what we see. That's good. That's really wise, and that's exactly what we're talking about here. In the face of evidence, and again, Davis is a statistician who understands psychology really well. It's an interesting combination in one person. In the face of data telling you that this doesn't work or there's a better way of doing it, people will still resist because they believe what they want to believe, despite what the data is telling them. So the moral of the story is, you know, think through your belief systems, challenge it yourself, don't be afraid, and don't settle, because that's our jobs. If you're a change agent, you got to do that. Right. Really good article from Davis, and this was one that I really resonated with, and I appreciated Davis because you really gave me a lot of good insight in this topic.
Yeah, he's an interesting guy. You mentioned he's like part philosopher, part statistician.
Yeah, a really good mix of stuff, and I think very valuable for all of you out there. If you haven't read Davis, check him out. Check out his website too. And again, right below the player page, right down there, you can find more information.
And by the way, if you ever want to read more stories by a particular author, when you're in a story, if you look right above the story, there's a little menu bar, and one of the links is Author Archive. If you click that, it'll bring up every article in our database by that particular author. So you can, if you find somebody you like, you can read everything they've written.
Yep.
Okay, well, we've all experienced it. You're just going along at work, minding your own business, and bam, all of a sudden, the company is in a crisis. The bosses are running around trying to figure out how to stop the hemorrhaging, and, well, you know what it's like. It's like a headless chicken leading the blind, which happens to be the name of the article by Alan Nickel that ran this week. The chaos is actually worse the more departments that a problem involves, because you get more people involved, you get more bosses involved, and so forth. And the real issue, says Nickel, is not solving the problem. That's not the issue. It's managing the chaos when that problem first breaks out. And the article gives really, I think, some really good common sense, a good common sense method of doing this. But I want to focus on just a couple of things that Nickel pointed out. You can read the entire process that he outlines by following the link below. But in short, Nickel says, first, don't argue with leaders when they go into emergency mode. They're shouting orders, they're making snap decisions. They don't want to hear from you, even if you have something good to say, because they've immediately clicked over into this, oh my gosh, the sky is falling, we've got to do something about it. Instead, says Nickel, say, yes ma'am, and then quietly gather information and suggest alternatives at a later date if that's appropriate. You don't want to hit them up right then. Basically, they want to see asses and elbows. So give them that, but take the time out. If you think that they're barking up the wrong tree, take the time to gather your information, and then when things settle down a little bit, you can go back and say, maybe when there's a status meeting, you can say, look, by the way, I've been looking into this a little bit. Here's some more information that I think adds to the facts about this. Have you considered? By this point, things have settled down a little bit. They're going to be a little bit more conducive to listening to what you have to say. So the key to presenting an alternative, says Nickel, is to first understand the intent and perceptions of the person giving directions, address the leader's needs or concerns, and then show how your idea might be better. And you just simply do that at a later time. The next thing to do is to stop arguments between peers. The biggest point of contention is simply agreeing on what the problem is. You need to circumvent all the finger pointing that happens when serious problems occur. And we've all experienced this. Everybody wants to say, no, it's not me, it's not me, it's not me, and it's him or it's her. If you can't do that, you're hobbled really from the very beginning. And Nickel gives a great, I think, 3-step program. It's a 3-step program. Hi, my name is Dirk. First, accept. I think we have a slide that kind of outlines some of these. First, accept the situation. Lay out the situation as it is. Lay out everything you know about the problem, the facts about the situation. Ask others for what facts they have. This gets everybody to accept the problem for what it is based on facts. And that's really what you want. You want to get everybody on the same page. It's like, first of all, let's settle down. What do we know? Let's all agree on what we know. Let's all agree on what the facts are. The next step is adapt. Define the problem. What is it? When or where did it occur? How do you know? Then, says Nickel, look at what the options are. What resources can be made available to throw at this? And make some plans. This is what he calls adapting to the situation. And then finally, of course, act. Carry out the plans. Get things rolling. Now you've laid out the facts. You know what the problem is. You've come up with a plan of action. Now you go out and you set about to carry this out. And what this does, says Nickel, is it breaks things down even in the course of an emergency. It breaks things down in a way, in nice little chunks that people can get their head around and kind of get the flow going, really in much the same way that you would do if it wasn't an emergency, right? I mean, we take the time, outside of an emergency, we take the time to look at the situation and to make your plan of attack and so forth. But you can do the same thing in an emergency. You just have to be prepared to do it and have this idea in your head of actually how you're going to carry that out.
I think sometimes the mistake that is made is assuming that the leader is going to organize all this stuff on the fly. And the leader wants to and will, and again, management needs to have plans in place for that. But the people, the team members, the workers also need to have their plans in place. And like you say, the important part of this is I think, don't argue. Don't start getting into finger pointing. Don't
right at the very beginning. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, there'll be time for all that.
Yeah.
There'll be time to unspool what happened and look at it later and figure it out. But when you're in crisis, what you need to do is calm down, listen and provide support. It's not the time to start raising your hand and coming up with ideas and complicating the matter. You want to keep it simple if you can. And I think that's really the key thing here is keep it simple, let your leaders lead, and even if you think they're not necessarily leading right, go with it. Go with it. I mean, certainly you want to note things that you think could be done differently and bring them up at the appropriate time, but primarily you want to follow, you want to be a good team member, you want to contribute to solving the problem, not making it worse.
Yeah, and if you don't react to the boss's instructions right away, he's not going to listen to you later. It's like he wants to see, I mean, right or wrong.
Yeah.
They're in crisis mode. All they know is, they got some customer that's PO'd at them. They got to respond to it. And his or her first response is, oh, we got to respond, and you do this and you do that. They want to see action, right or wrong. They want to see action, and then you got to come back and later on and kind of approach it from a different angle. If sometimes those snap decisions are the right ones, in which case, awesome. Well, but if they aren't, you got to pick your time.
And also, don't kind of subvert it yourself. Don't kind of subtly say, kind of half butt it and say, well, sure, I'll do what you want.
Sure, right.
But I mean, do it. Do the best you can at all times, and let the chips fall where they may, and then go back later and like I say, look at it a little more closely.
Exactly.
All right, thanks, Rick. Thanks, Alan Nickel, for a great article. Always good articles from Alan. All right. Well, finally, we're going to bring you our tweet of the week this week. And this one comes to us from a frequent and very well followed tweeter, Richard D. Cushing, who reminds us of the wisdom of W. Edwards Deming. Plants don't close from poor workmanship, but from poor management. W. Edwards Deming. Deming always was getting on with managers. Boy, oh boy. I tell you, he was really on it. Well, thank you, Richard. Thank you, Dr. Deming, for that good reminder. And if you want to see all the tweets that we share, be sure to follow us at twitter.com/QualityDigest.
Well, that is our show today. And once again, hey, congratulations to all of the Malcolm Baldrige National Quality Award winners, but especially for the one right in our backyard, Sutter Davis Hospital down in Davis. But as we close our show today, Mike Mickelwright ponders the following question. Is it copying or is it benchmarking? Well, he'll let you know. See you next week.
See you next week. Have a good weekend.
It keeps freezing. Did you ever wonder why there are so many versions of the word mistake proofing? First, of course, there's idiot proofing. I never liked that version because right off the bat we are referring to people as idiots, which defeats the philosophy of mistake proofing and not blaming people. Then there's fool proofing. That's no different, really. It makes me think of fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Or as former President George Bush said it,
there's an old saying in Tennessee, I know it's in Texas, probably in Tennessee, that says, fool me once, shame on you. If fool me, we can't get fooled again.
Perhaps he should have foolproofed his speeches by instituting a policy of never wandering off the script. Then there's error proofing. This is not bad. It sounds like a term from baseball, and it's nice sounding. Errors. If it came from basketball, we would use harsher terms like foul proofing, but then that would sound too close to foolproofing. A form of error proofing in baseball might be to wear a really large mitt, or allow the infielders to use a very powerful shop vac. From Japan, we use the term poka yoke for mistake proofing. I like that term. It conjures up images of my poking the yolk of a sunny side up egg that I just made for my wife to make sure it was properly cooked. Poka yoke. In England, when they make a mistake, they say, oopsie daisy. I know firsthand that they practice oopsie daisy proofing. Occasionally I've heard parents talk about their youngest child and say with a smile and tilted head that Bobby was our little mistake. I wonder how Bobby feels when he learns that he was a mistake. He probably doesn't smile like his parents do. I got my mom interested in the concept of mistake proofing right after I was born. There's differing degrees of mistake proofing. There's mistake proofing through physical contact, where it becomes impossible to make a mistake, like plugging in a plug into an outlet with the wrong voltage. Perhaps we should call the best form of mistake proofing zero proof. It would be a reverse scale like in golf, where the lowest proof number is the best. The highest number, say 200 proof, like the alcohol scale, would signify a process with no mistake proofing, since that's when a lot of mistakes occur. I'm the wise guy, Mike Mickelwright.